Tom's Forest Adventure. Tom is a small, orange cat. He lives in a cozy house with a kind woman named Mrs. Brown. Every day, Tom plays in the garden. He loves to chase butterflies and climb trees. Mrs. Brown always watches Tom and smiles. She loves her little cat. One sunny morning, Mrs. Brown opens the door to let Tom play outside. Tom runs out happily. He sees a butterfly and starts to chase it. The butterfly flies over the garden wall, and Tom follows. He jumps over the wall and lands on the other side. Tom looks around. He is not in his garden anymore. He is in a big, green forest. The trees are tall, and the leaves make a soft sound in the wind. Tom is excited. He wants to explore this new place. He starts to walk through the forest, looking at the birds and smelling the flowers. As Tom walks, he sees a small river. The water is clear and cool. Tom is thirsty, so he walks to the river to drink. As he drinks, he hears a noise. It is a soft rustling sound coming from the bushes. Tom looks up and sees a little squirrel. The squirrel has big, bright eyes and a bushy tail. "Hello," says the squirrel. "Who are you?" "I am Tom," says the cat. "I live in a house with Mrs. Brown." "Who are you?" "I am Sammy," says the squirrel. "I live in this forest." "Are you lost, Tom?" Tom thinks for a moment. He looks around and realizes he does not know the way back to his house. The forest is big, and everything looks the same. Tom feels a little scared. "Yes," says Tom, "I think I am lost. Can you help me find my way home?" Sammy nods. "I can help you. But first, we need to find my friend, Benny the rabbit. Benny knows this forest very well. He will know the way to your house." Tom and Sammy start walking through the forest together. The trees are tall, and the forest is very quiet. Tom feels better with Sammy by his side. After a while, they come to a big tree. Under the tree, there is a rabbit with long ears and a soft, white tail. It is Benny. "Hello, Benny," says Sammy. "This is Tom. He is lost and needs to find his way home. Can you help him?" Benny looks at Tom and smiles. "Of course, I can help," he says. "But the way home is long, and we must be careful. There are many paths in this forest, and some are not safe." Tom feels a little nervous, but he knows he must be brave to find his way home. Benny leads the way, and Tom and Sammy follow close behind. They walk through the forest, past tall trees and colorful flowers. Sometimes they hear birds singing, and sometimes they hear the wind in the leaves. As they walk, they come to a fork in the path. One path goes to the left, and the other goes to the right. Benny stops and thinks. "We must be careful here," he says. "One path leads to a dark cave, and the other leads to a sunny meadow. We must choose the right path." Tom looks at the two paths. The path to the left looks dark and scary. The path to the right looks bright and welcoming. Tom feels sure that the right path is the way to go. "Let's take the right path," he says. Benny nods, and they start walking down the right path. The sun shines through the trees, and the birds sing. Tom feels happy and safe. He knows he made the right choice. As they walk, the path becomes narrower. The trees grow closer together, and the sunlight becomes dim. Tom starts to feel worried. "Are we going the right way?" he asks Benny. Benny looks around and frowns. "I am not sure," he says. "This path looks different than I remember." Just then, they hear a loud growl. Tom's fur stands on end, and he looks around. "What was that?" he whispers. Sammy and Benny look scared. "We need to find a safe place," says Benny. "Follow me." Benny leads them to a big rock. They hide behind it and stay very quiet. Tom's heart beats fast. He peeks out from behind the rock and sees a big, black wolf walking down the path. The wolf has sharp teeth and fierce eyes. Tom holds his breath and stays very still. The wolf sniffs the air and looks around, but it does not see them. After a few moments, the wolf walks away, disappearing into the trees. Tom lets out a sigh of relief. "That was close," he says. Benny nods. "We must be very careful," he says. "This forest is full of surprises. We need to find the right path quickly." They come out from behind the rock and continue walking. Tom stays close to Benny and Sammy. After a while, they see a light ahead. The trees start to thin out, and they come to the edge of the forest. Before them is a wide, sunny meadow filled with flowers. Tom feels happy and relieved. "We found the right path," he says. "Now we can find our way home." Benny smiles. "Yes," he says. "The meadow leads to the village, and from there, you can find your way back to Mrs. Brown's house." Tom feels a wave of gratitude for his new friends. "Thank you, Benny and Sammy," he says. "I could not have done this without you." Benny and Sammy smile. "We are happy to help," says Sammy. "That is what friends are for." Tom, Benny, and Sammy walk through the meadow. The flowers are bright and colorful, and the sun feels warm on Tom's fur. Tom feels safe and happy. He knows he will be home soon. As they walk, Tom sees a small village in the distance. The houses are small, and there is a road that leads out of the village. Tom knows that road. It is the road to Mrs. Brown's house. "We are almost there," Tom says excitedly. They walk through the village, and soon, they see Mrs. Brown's house. Tom runs ahead, his heart full of joy. Mrs. Brown is standing at the gate, looking worried. When she sees Tom, her face lights up with happiness. "Tom, you are home," she cries. She picks him up and hugs him tightly. "I was so worried about you." Tom purrs and rubs his head against Mrs. Brown. He is so happy to be home. He looks back at Benny and Sammy, who are standing by the gate. "Thank you, my friends," Tom says. "You helped me find my way home." Benny and Sammy smile. "Anytime, Tom," says Benny. "We are always here if you need us." Mrs. Brown smiles at Benny and Sammy. "Thank you for bringing Tom home," she says. "You are welcome to visit any time." Tom waves goodbye to Benny and Sammy as they walk back to the forest. He knows he will see them again. Tom feels happy and safe at home with Mrs. Brown. He knows that he is loved and that he has friends who will always help him. Tom curls up in his favorite spot, by the window, and falls asleep. He dreams of his adventure in the forest and of his friends, Benny and Sammy. Tom is a brave cat, and he knows that no matter where his adventures take him, he will always find his way home. Tom wakes up the next morning, feeling refreshed. He stretches his paws and looks out the window. The sun is shining, and the birds are singing. Tom feels happy. He decides to visit the forest again, but this time, he will be more careful. Mrs. Brown opens the door, and Tom steps outside. He takes a deep breath of the fresh morning air. Tom walks slowly toward the forest, remembering the path he took the day before. He sees the garden wall and jumps over it, landing softly on the other side. Tom looks around the forest. The trees are tall, and the sunlight filters through the leaves, casting a warm glow on the ground. Tom follows the path he remembers, carefully stepping over roots and stones. As Tom walks, he hears a soft rustling sound. He stops and looks around, his ears twitching. Out of the bushes comes a little bird with bright red feathers. The bird flutters its wings and lands on a low branch. "Hello," says the bird. "Are you lost?" Tom shakes his head. "No, I am not lost," he says. "I am just exploring the forest. Who are you?" "I am Ruby," says the bird. "I live in this forest. It is a beautiful place, but you must be careful. There are many animals here, and some are not so friendly." Tom nods. "I know," he says. "Yesterday, I met a big wolf. It was very scary, but I had friends with me, and we stayed safe." Ruby tilts her head. "You are brave," she says. "But remember, the forest can be dangerous. It is important to stay on the right path." Tom smiles. "I will be careful," he says. "Thank you, Ruby." Ruby flaps her wings and flies away, disappearing into the trees. Tom continues walking, feeling more confident. He remembers what Benny and Sammy told him about the paths in the forest. Tom decides to stay on the main path and not wander off. As Tom walks, he sees a small pond. The water is clear, and Tom can see fish swimming beneath the surface. He stops to watch them for a moment. The fish move gracefully, their scales shimmering in the sunlight. Tom sits by the pond, feeling peaceful. He likes the forest, but he knows he must be careful. After a while, Tom gets up and continues walking. The forest is quiet, except for the soft sound of the wind in the leaves. Tom walks for a long time, enjoying the sights and sounds of the forest. He sees squirrels gathering nuts, rabbits hopping through the grass, and birds singing high in the trees. Tom feels happy to be in such a beautiful place. But as the day goes on, Tom starts to feel a little tired. The forest seems bigger than he remembered, and the path is not as clear. Tom looks around and realizes he is not sure which way to go. The trees all look the same, and the sun is starting to set. Tom feels a little worried. He knows he must find his way home before it gets dark. Tom tries to remember the way he came, but the paths all look different. He decides to follow the path that seems most familiar. As Tom walks, the forest becomes darker. The shadows grow longer, and the air feels cooler. Tom hears the sound of an owl hooting in the distance. He walks faster, hoping to find his way out of the forest before night falls. Tom comes to a clearing in the forest. The trees open up, and Tom can see the sky. The stars are starting to come out, twinkling like tiny lights. Tom sits down in the clearing, feeling a little scared. He does not know which way to go. Just then, Tom hears a familiar voice. Tom, Tom, where are you? Tom's ears perk up. He knows that voice. It is Sammy. Tom stands up and looks around. He sees Sammy and Benny coming toward him through the trees. Tom feels a wave of relief. Sammy, Benny, Tom cries, I am so glad to see you. Sammy and Benny run up to Tom. We were looking for you, says Sammy. We saw that you were not at home, and we knew you must be in the forest. Are you lost again? Tom nods. Yes, he says. I thought I remembered the way, but the paths all look different. I do not know how to get home. Benny smiles. Do not worry, Tom, he says. We know the way. Follow us, and we will take you home. Tom feels grateful for his friends. He knows he can trust them to help him find his way. Tom follows Benny and Sammy as they lead him through the forest. The trees look less scary with his friends by his side. As they walk, the forest becomes lighter. The moon rises in the sky, casting a soft glow on the path. Tom feels safe with Benny and Sammy. He knows they will find the way home. After a while, they come to the edge of the forest. Tom sees the garden wall in the distance. He knows he is almost home. Tom feels a wave of happiness. He cannot wait to be back in his cozy house with Mrs. Brown. They reach the garden wall, and Tom jumps over it. He lands softly on the other side, and looks back at his friends. Thank you, Benny and Sammy, Tom says. You are the best friends a cat could have. Benny and Sammy smile. We are happy to help, Tom, says Sammy. You are never alone in the forest. We are always here for you. Tom waves goodbye to his friends and walks back to his house. Mrs. Brown is waiting for him at the door. She looks relieved to see him. Tom, you are home, she says. She picks him up and hugs him. I was so worried about you. Tom purrs and rubs his head against Mrs. Brown. He is so happy to be home. He knows that he is loved and that he has friends who will always help him. Tom curls up in his favorite spot by the window and closes his eyes. He is tired, but he feels safe and happy. Tom knows that he is home, and that is where he belongs.